All right, let's jump right in, shall we?
Yeah.
You guys sent in some really cool research on musculoskeletal health,
Yeah.
all from Chapter 7 of Integrative Geriatric Nutrition. And we're going to break it all down for you.
Absolutely.
Look at how what you eat impacts your joints, your bones, everything, especially as we age, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating how this chapter really emphasizes that,
Right.
It's not just about what we eat, but it's also how we move our bodies.
Oh, yeah.
Our musculoskeletal system, it thrives on activity.
It's like, what's that saying? Use it or lose it.
Exactly.
And you know what? This chapter actually mentioned some research suggesting that regular physical activity
Wow.
could add like 7 years to our healthy lifespan. So
That's amazing.
it's pretty incredible. But before we get too far into that, I want to talk about something that's probably holding a lot of us back from, getting active, especially as we get older. Muscle and joint pain.
Right.
I was really surprised to learn how much food sensitivities can contribute to this.
Absolutely. Even foods that are considered to be healthy can trigger inflammation and pain
Right.
in certain people.
For some people.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It really highlights the fact that we all have these unique responses to food.
And you know what? It's interesting because the chapter actually lists the top 5 culprits. Gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and eggs. So if you're dealing with like achy joints or muscles and you can't figure out why, maybe try an elimination diet.
Right.
Cut those foods out for 4 to 6 weeks
Yeah, I would say,
and see if it makes a difference.
it's always good to work with your doctor or registered dietitian before making any big dietary changes.
Of course.
Just to make sure that you're still getting all the nutrients that you need.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
And, it was really interesting because the chapter also talks about a few herbs and supplements that can help with pain and inflammation. One that I thought was really cool was curcumin,
Yes.
which is the active compound in turmeric. Right. And did you know it's been found to be just as effective as like over-the-counter anti-inflammatory gels,
Wow.
but without those side effects?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Curcumin is a very powerful anti-inflammatory.
it is.
And another one that this chapter mentions is SAMe, which can help with pain and inflammation.
Right.
But here's an interesting thing about SAMe. If you take too much of it,
Oh,
it can actually trigger manic episodes in some people.
I did not know that.
So always start low and go slow with that one, and definitely talk to your healthcare provider before
Yeah.
you start taking it.
And what about topical cannabinoids? I've heard a lot about those lately.
There's growing evidence for those in terms of pain and inflammation.
That's interesting.
It's just important to remember that supplements can sometimes interact with your medication.
Absolutely.
So it's always crucial to check with your doctor before adding anything new.
Safety first.
Yeah.
Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that I had never really heard of before. Anorexia of aging. When I first heard that term, I immediately thought of eating disorders. But it's actually a much broader concept.
Right. It's not just about a loss of appetite.
Right.
It's a lot of different things that work together that can lead to weight loss and frailty in older adults.
And I think this chapter really highlights, this is something that can often be, missed or dismissed as just, oh, this is just a normal part of aging.
Yeah.
But it's not something that has to just be accepted, right?
Right.
So what can we do about it?
So early identification and intervention are key.
Okay.
We need to assess people for protein and energy malnutrition. We're aiming for 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
And this might mean adjusting what they're eating, but we also need to look at, is there anything else going on that could be contributing to this?
Like what kind of things?
Well, it could be as simple as ill-fitting dentures.
Oh, wow.
That makes it hard to chew. Or maybe they can't get to the food easily because they have mobility issues or financial problems. Even stress and social isolation can play a role.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's all interconnected.
It is.
Yeah.
I also noticed that the chapter mentions like specific tools
Oh, yeah.
for screening, like the SNAQ and the MNA.
Exactly.
What are those?
So SNAQ stands for Simplified Nutritional Appetite Questionnaire.
Okay.
And MNA stands for Mini Nutritional Assessment.
Okay.
And these are tools that have been validated
Oh.
that can help doctors figure out
Oh, I see.
who might be at risk for malnutrition or anorexia of aging.
So it's not just looking at somebody and saying, oh, you look thin.
Exactly.
Right.
There's an actual...
It's a systematic...
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of muscle health, I want to talk about another condition that we often hear about as we age, Sarcopenia.
Yes.
I know it has something to do with losing muscle mass, but...
Right. Like, what does that actually mean for our overall health?
So sarcopenia is when your muscles get smaller and weaker as you get older.
Right.
And we naturally lose muscle mass as we age anyway.
Okay.
But things like inactivity, not eating right, and hormonal changes can make it happen faster.
Yeah.
And when you lose muscle, it's not just about being weaker.
Right.
It can affect your balance and how well you can move around.
So it's not just about, being able to lift heavy things.
Yeah.
It's about being able to, live your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can affect your ability to do things like gardening, playing with your grandkids,
Right.
or even just getting around your own house.
So it really impacts independence.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it can have some serious consequences.
Oh, like what?
Well, it makes you more likely to fall, break
Oh.
bones, and you're even more likely to die sooner.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
But the good news is there are things you can do to prevent it.
Okay. Like what?
So we're talking about making sure you get enough protein, fixing any problems that might be messing with how your body absorbs nutrients,
Oh, okay.
and, of course, getting regular exercise.
So it seems like protein, addressing underlying issues in movement are like recurring themes here.
They really are.
Yeah.
It just shows how everything in our body is connected.
It does.
When it comes to musculoskeletal health, you can't just focus on one thing.
Yeah.
You got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that I know is probably on a lot of our minds as we age, especially
Yeah.
bone health.
Uh-huh.
I want to talk about osteopenia and osteoporosis.
Right.
And I have to admit, I used to think that once you hit a certain age, bone loss was just inevitable.
Yeah.
But reading through this chapter, it seems like that's not necessarily true.
That's right. While it's true that our bones are strongest when we're young,
Right.
there are lots of things we can do to
Yeah.
keep our bones healthy as we age and even slow down or prevent bone loss.
So there's hope.
There is. Okay, definitely.
So this chapter really stresses the importance of calcium,
Uh-huh.
but how much do we actually need?
Well, that's where it gets a little tricky
Right.
because it really depends on the person.
Okay.
That's why it's important to talk to a professional,
Uh-huh.
to do a proper assessment of your diet and look at your medical history
Right.
and your lifestyle to figure out what you need.
Right, because if you're somebody who doesn't eat dairy,
Exactly.
you're going to have to find those other sources.
Right. You need to figure out where you're going to get that calcium from
Right.
and if you need to take supplements.
Right. And that was interesting, too, because I was surprised to learn that high-protein diets
Uh-huh.
are actually associated with good bone mineral density.
That's right.
So,
Good news for meat lovers.
yeah, right. But on the flip side, the chapter also says that caffeine intake
Yeah.
is linked to lower bone mass density.
Right.
So I guess it's about balance, right?
Yeah. Moderation is key.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also not just about what we're eating. It's about what our bodies are actually able to absorb.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Because, for example, if you have low stomach acid, a condition called ochlorhydria, you might not be able to absorb calcium from your food properly,
Even if you're eating.
even if you're eating lots of calcium-rich foods.
Wow. So your diet could look great on paper.
Exactly. You
That's
might
a
not be
little-
getting to your bones.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And we also have to think about other things that can impact bone health.
Right. Things like hormonal imbalances, vitamin D deficiency, and even some medications.
It really is like a detective game,
It is.
to figure out what's going on and what might be contributing to bone loss.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have a personalized approach.
Right.
Because everyone's different.
We are.
You need to tailor the recommendations to each individual.
Exactly. And speaking of personalized approaches, this chapter includes some really fascinating case studies.
I love those.
They show how these principles are applied in real life,
Absolutely.
and they really bring the science to life.
Yeah, it's so helpful to see how it all works in practice.
Exactly. And these case studies are so inspiring.
They are.
They give you hope that even if you're facing, some health challenges, you can make positive changes.
Absolutely.
So should we dive into those?
Let's do it. These real-life examples are so powerful.
They are.
They really show how effective personalized nutrition and lifestyle changes can be.
Okay, so let's start with John, the 69-year-old woodworker who was struggling with osteoarthritis pain.
Okay. John's case really shows how much the choices that we make can impact our musculoskeletal health.
Yeah.
He had his own furniture business,
Wow.
So he was super busy and wasn't really taking care of himself.
And it doesn't sound like his diet was helping much either.
No, not really. He was eating a lot of starches and grains and animal protein, but not enough fruits and vegetables, which are so important for fighting inflammation.
And he was also dealing with high blood pressure.
Yes, it was mildly elevated.
Yeah.
And he wasn't taking anything for it.
And even though he had a physically demanding job,
Yeah.
he didn't have a regular exercise routine.
No, not really. It was kind of like all these things were adding up.
It sounds like it, yeah.
You know, his diet wasn't great, he wasn't exercising, and he was just relying on medication for his pain
Right.
without getting to the root of the problem.
And this is all contributing to his osteoarthritis.
Exactly.
But the good news is,
Yeah.
he was ready for a change.
He was.
He decided to work with a nutritional health coach, and he switched to a Mediterranean diet.
Great choice.
Yeah.
That's packed with anti-inflammatory foods.
It is, yeah.
And he even started doing some intermittent fasting.
Wow, so he was really making some big changes.
He was dedicated.
He was.
Yeah,
And on top of that, he started taking a bunch of different supplements
he did.
to address his specific needs, right?
Yeah.
Like magnesium, high-dose fish oil, glucosamine, chondroitin.
Those are all great for your joints.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
MSM and vitamin D with K2.
Very good choices for him.
Yeah.
They gave his body what it needed to start healing.
And remember how he was a little unsure about medical cannabis?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he ended up loving the hemp-based CBD and CBDA products.
That's awesome.
It is, yeah.
That can be so helpful for pain.
And it was, because he was able to really cut back on those over-the-counter painkillers.
That's fantastic.
It is.
So much better than relying on those long term.
Right, and his story is so amazing because within just a few months, his pain decreased.
Wow.
His blood pressure went back to normal.
Yeah, it's great.
His constipation improved.
Wow.
Even his cholesterol levels and inflammation markers got better.
That's a really powerful example of how a holistic approach can make a huge difference.
It is.
It's not just about treating one symptom.
Right.
It's about looking at the whole person.
The whole picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows that even when you're facing multiple health issues, there are things you can do to get better.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to Carolyn now.
Okay.
She was 83 years old, and she was dealing with weight loss, sarcopenia, and just really bad fatigue after having a stroke.
Right.
And I think her case really highlights how important it is to review medications,
It is.
especially for older adults who are often taking multiple medications.
It's so important.
It is.
Because sometimes those medications can have side effects that can actually make things worse.
Yeah, so Carolyn was taking medications for diabetes, high blood pressure,
Right.
atrial fibrillation, and to prevent another stroke. And while those medications made sense individually,
Yeah.
the combination of them might have been causing her fatigue and low blood pressure.
It's a delicate balance, you know?
It is.
We want to manage those chronic conditions effectively.
Absolutely.
But we also have to be really careful about potential side effects.
Right, so they decided to discontinue one of her medications
Yeah.
and lower the dosage of another one.
And that's a great example of how speaking up for yourself or your loved ones can really make a difference.
It really can.
You know, sometimes you have to advocate to get the best care.
Yeah, and in addition to those medication changes, Carolyn also made some changes to her diet
She did.
and started incorporating some targeted nutritional support.
Exactly.
So she moved away from that really strict low-salt diet,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, sometimes can be too restrictive.
It can be. It's
Yeah.
all about finding the right balance.
Right, and she started having bone broth and plant-based protein powder every day.
Those are great additions.
They are.
Bone broth is so nourishing.
Yeah, and she also started taking L-carnitine and ubiquinol,
Uh-huh.
and she increased her fish oil intake.
Excellent choices.
Yeah,
All of those can help with energy levels, muscle function, and heart health.
they can. And you know what? Within a few weeks, her energy started to improve.
That's wonderful.
She was able to participate in physical therapy, start walking again,
That's amazing.
and she was able to get her mobility and independence back.
You know, Carolyn's story really shows how personalized interventions can make a huge difference.
They can.
By addressing those medication side effects, supporting her nutritional needs,
Right.
and encouraging her to be active.
Right.
She was able to get her energy back and live a better quality of life.
It's amazing.
It is.
And it's a reminder that even after a serious health event, there's always hope.
Absolutely.
Okay, for our last case study, let's talk about Mary.
Okay.
She was 72 years old, and had been diagnosed with osteoporosis. And she really wanted to find a natural way to improve her bone density.
She did.
And avoid medication, if possible.
And Mary's case really highlights how powerful lifestyle changes and targeted nutrition can be for bone health.
Yeah, and she was a pescatarian who didn't consume dairy.
Right.
So it was super important for her to get enough calcium from other sources.
Absolutely, and she was able to do that through some dietary changes and supplements.
Okay, so what do those dietary changes look like?
Well, she started incorporating things like sardines with bones.
Oh, interesting.
Tofu and miso soup into her diet.
Those are great sources of calcium.
They are.
Yeah.
And they're often overlooked.
They are. And did she take any supplements?
Yes, she did. She started taking a bone health supplement that had calcium, magnesium, vitamin K2, and some other important trace minerals.
Oh, and I noticed it said vitamin K2 in both MK4 and MK7 forms.
Oh, yeah, good catch.
What are those?
So vitamin K2 is super important for bone health.
Okay.
It helps activate proteins that help bind calcium to your bones.
I see.
MK4 is the kind you find in animal products, and it's really important for making sure your bones are strong.
Okay.
MK7 is found in fermented foods, and it stays active in your body for longer.
So it's like a longer lasting form.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so by taking both forms, Mary was getting the best of both worlds.
She was covering all her bases.
She was.
Yeah.
And she was already pretty active, but she decided to add Tai Chi to her routine.
Oh, nice.
To work on her balance and help prevent fall.
And it's incredible because in just 2 years, she saw amazing results.
She did.
Her bone density got better. She felt stronger and more balanced.
That's great.
And even her horseback riding skills improved.
That's incredible.
It is. It really shows that we have a lot of power to improve our health when we listen to our bodies.
Absolutely. Mary's story is a perfect example of that.
It is, and it's so encouraging to know that we don't have to just accept age-related decline.
Right.
There are things we can do at every age to stay healthy and active.
I completely agree. These 3 case studies are so inspiring.
They are.
They really highlight how important it is to take a holistic approach to musculoskeletal health.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting rid of symptoms.
Right.
It's about understanding the root cause, addressing nutritional deficiencies, making lifestyle changes, and empowering people to take control of their own health.
They really show how resilient the human body is.
They do.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the body can heal and adapt.
So what are some of the key takeaways that we can apply to our own lives?
You know, one of the most important takeaways is that movement is medicine.
I love that.
It really is. Staying active is essential for maintaining muscle mass, bone density, and joint flexibility.
Right, and it's about finding activities that you actually enjoy.
Absolutely. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right.
It could be dancing, swimming, gardening, or even just taking a brisk walk.
Whatever gets you moving.
Exactly. It really is all about, finding something that fits into your life and that you can stick with long term.
Right. And, it doesn't have to be, hours and hours at the gym.
No, absolutely not.
It could be small changes, right?
Exactly. Even small, consistent effort can make a big difference over time.
It really can.
It really can.
Okay, another thing that we've talked about a lot is the importance of a good diet.
Oh, absolutely. And it's got to be a nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet.
Right. So what does that mean?
Well, it means focusing on whole foods like fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds.
Okay.
And cutting back on those processed foods, sugary drinks, and unhealthy fats.
And of course, we can't forget about protein.
We can't. It's so important for building and maintaining muscle, especially as we age.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in all the fruits and veggies.
It is.
But protein is crucial.
It really is. And it's a good question to ask yourself. Are you getting enough protein?
I like that.
Maybe track your intake for a few days and see where you're at.
That's a good idea.
And if you're not getting enough, think about adding in some protein-rich foods or even a supplement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We also talked about food sensitivities.
We did.
Right. And if you're experiencing those aches and pains, especially if you don't know what's causing them, maybe it's time to try an elimination diet.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Right.
Cut out things like gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and eggs for a few weeks and see what happens.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, work with a registered dietitian.
Oh, yeah. They can be a great resource.
They can, because they can help you figure out those sensitivities and create a plan that works for you.
Right. It's all about personalization.
It is.
Finding what works for your body.
Absolutely. And, it's so important to remember that we need to address those underlying health conditions.
Yes, absolutely.
That could be contributing to those musculoskeletal problems.
Yeah, whether it's diabetes, thyroid issues, hormonal imbalances, it's important to work with your doctor to manage those.
The whole picture, right.
The whole picture, exactly.
And we can't forget about stress.
Oh, stress is a big one.
It is, because chronic stress can really do a number on your body.
It can. It increases inflammation, makes pain worse.
Right, so find those activities that help you relax and de-stress.
Yes, things like yoga, meditation, spending time in nature, or even just connecting with loved ones.
Right, those things are so important.
They are. They often get overlooked.
They do.
But stress management is crucial for your overall health, and that includes your musculoskeletal system.
It really does, and I think it's important to remember that supplements, while they can be helpful, they're not a magic bullet.
Definitely not. It's important to talk to your doctor.
Right.
Or a qualified healthcare professional to figure out which supplements are right for you.
Because they can help you assess your needs and make sure you're not taking anything that could interact with your medication.
Exactly. It's all about creating a safe and effective plan.
It is.
Yeah.
So, wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have. We've talked about food sensitivities, underlying health conditions, the importance of a good diet.
Yeah, and supplements, and of course, movement.
And let's not forget about those inspiring case studies.
We can't, because they really showed how real people had transformed their lives by taking a holistic approach to their musculoskeletal health.
Yeah, it's amazing what's possible when we take a proactive approach.
It is, and I hope that our listeners feel empowered to do the same.
I hope so too. You know, small changes can make a big difference.
They really can.
So start incorporating those healthy habits into your routine.
Celebrate those little victories along the way.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, you have the power to create positive change in your life.
That's a great message to end on.
It is, isn't it?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into musculoskeletal health.
It's been a pleasure being here.
It has. And we hope you all feel inspired to prioritize your well-being.
Keep moving, keep learning, and keep thriving.